Welcome to the inner world of Orange. Today's topic is killing the ego versus suicide. I think suicide is a misunderstanding. I was very, very depressed when I was 18 and I couldn't find any meaning in life. And so I started looking through all the books in my library, and I wasn't picky, so I was reading through books on religion, all the religions, philosophy, self-help books, everything basically. And the more I read, especially the philosophical arguments, the very clever arguments, the more empty I felt. It wasn't helping me. It was not sufficient to have a rational reason to value human life. To have that, it was not sufficient to pull me out of this very, very deep hole that I had fallen into, because emotionally I was still feeling a great sense of despair, and all the best reasons in the world were not enough to take me out of that. And I didn't commit suicide, obviously. I'm sitting here. I think possibly what stopped me was the thought that would have been a little bit too easy and was not actually the solution I was looking for. It seems to be taking the fastest way out and not really answering the question that I was actually asking myself, which is there a meaning to life? I cannot answer that if I was no longer here. So it became clear that it required staying alive to somehow work this out, even if I didn't feel like it. And I didn't feel like it a lot of the times. It was very difficult. What happened was that every day, it's usually at the end of the day that I feel worse. And I said to myself, now, I'm feeling terrible. I can't do this. There's too much pain. The burden is too great for me. I'm going to collapse. And yeah, I cannot do this anymore. And every time that I've said that, I really felt it, not just said it, but really felt like, oh, this is not gonna keep going like this, because I cannot keep going like this. The next day, something had shifted microscopically. Okay, I'm not talking about these instant transformations that other people might have experienced. I didn't experience that. I experienced these very excruciatingly painful steps, little shifts that allowed me to breathe just a little bit easier so that I could get through the next day, until I come again to the point where I'm like, well, this is also too painful. I can't deal with this anymore. And then we start all over again. And over time, and this took years, literally 10 years, more than 10 years, over time, it became clear that what was shifting was the ego structure, the sense of who I am. So I discovered that what really needed to die when I said, I can't live like this anymore, I'm considering killing myself, what I actually want to kill is the ego and not the body, because the body hasn't done anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with the body. It's breathing, the heart is beating, everything's functioning fine on the physical level. What was not functioning is the ego level, the level of who am I, and this I being such a prison that I felt deeply trapped and very, very miserable. And But this prison is a mental structure. It feels very real, and the suffering it causes, the pain is also very real. But the structure itself is totally a mental structure. And the reason it's so difficult to break is because I was totally invested in keeping it in place unless I had my back literally against the wall and say, well, either this structure goes or I go. The body goes. I've had it. Eventually, I found that with these very small shifts, I was able to attain enough space to think to myself, well, I don't need to feel suicidal to make these shifts. I could make these shifts voluntarily. Why wait until I'm feeling like I'm going to die and I cannot handle this anymore to change this structure? Why not just run into the problem, so to speak, instead of letting it run into me? And it took a lot of time to make this space. It took a bit of distance from the edge of the suffering. When you're just struggling to stay alive, the last thing you're going to say is, well, I'm going to just run into more suffering, because you just don't have the energy. There's no capacity for that. It takes having a little bit of space, of capacity, to be able to say, well, now that I have that capacity, the choice that I'm going to make is to go into the suffering head on and shift what needs to be shifted. But just basically everything, eventually I discovered, is basically any identification with a sense of I, a sense of entitlement to being this self, this identity. And the more I do it, the more I realize that this is really the work necessary, and I don't need to feel suicidal to do this work. I voluntarily get up every day to do it. Sometimes I do it in the night. If thoughts bother me in the night, I stay awake and do the work of confronting this head on, because what I've found in my experience is that this is the only way to go into life. And I've been very close to not living, so I try to take every opportunity to go into what is living in me. The thought of killing myself is never too far away, in the sense that I can smell the whiff of despair from a very, from a great distance. And then I remember, oh yes, I've spent years in that place where this whiff comes from, and I don't really want to do that anymore, so we're going to look at this right now. Not going to delay, because there's no point. So in that sense, it's present because I use it as a guide. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.